Welcome to the Strange North channel. Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you that the province of Saskatchewan has 3 cryptid legends within its boundaries. And yes, this province has not traditionally been seen as a cryptid hotspot within Canada, but you might be surprised to learn about all the sightings that have occurred in this area. And for anyone watching this that does not know what a cryptid is, it's essentially a creature or a legend of folklore and mythology that has not been proven to exist yet. There are many cryptids around the world that people repeatedly claim to see, but these creatures are outside of official scientific classification, and they exist in a gray area where people see them, but they have not been proven to exist yet. And honestly, Saskatchewan in general tends to be a bit ignored and disregarded by the rest of Canada, but there's so much interesting history and folklore within this province, and so I'm looking forward to showing you the cryptid sightings that have occurred in Saskatchewan. So let's get started. At number 1 is Bigfoot. Now, the Bigfoot or Sasquatch is not traditionally associated with Saskatchewan. This creature is more strongly linked with British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest in general. But if you're really interested in this cryptid, you already know that it has been seen across the continent, not just on the West Coast. And I was a bit surprised to learn about the interest in this cryptid within the province of Saskatchewan. So when you're talking about Saskatchewan specifically, the sightings of Bigfoot and interest in this cryptid really took off in the early 1970s. So there is a small town called Rock Glen, which is in the far south of Saskatchewan. It's actually quite close to the Canada-US border. Beginning in the early 1970s, residents of this town started seeing this creature that resembled Bigfoot. They described it as being about 8 to 10 feet tall. It had a shrill voice and a very strong skunk smell, and these things are in line with typical Bigfoot sightings. The people living in this town nicknamed this creature Zuby, and they said that it lived on or near Columbus Hill, a very prominent hill in the town's vicinity. And for many years, there was a group in the town that called themselves the Zoob Troop, and they published a biannual newsletter that discussed sightings of this creature in the area. And to this day, the town of Rock Glen is strongly associated with this Bigfoot-type creature called the Zooby. The early 1970s also saw the beginning of a Bigfoot enthusiast group based in Regina, and they called themselves the Saskatchewan Sasquatch Seekers Society. Try saying that 5 times fast. Wow. I found a couple interesting newspaper articles from 1970. In one article, it mentioned that William Gray, who is the general manager of the prestigious Hotel Saskatchewan in Regina, being elected president of this Sasquatch Society. And I even found another article from that same year published in New York, where it talked about the Regina Junior Chamber of Commerce offering $100,000 reward for a Sasquatch specimen. And so this really highlights that interest in this particular cryptid in the province of Saskatchewan goes back many decades. There is a group called the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and they compile sightings from across North America. And on their website, they list a number of sightings that have occurred in the province, and I'm going to tell you about those right now. Again, these are simply anecdotal stories that people have submitted. In 1992, apparently a Bigfoot was spotted by fishermen near Churchill River. A few years later, in 1995, apparently this creature was seen on a road near McCaig. In 2001, a group of hikers claimed to have found Bigfoot prints in Cypress Hills Interprovincial Park. In 2004, a group of hunters talked about hearing Bigfoot vocalizations and claimed to have seen a strange deer kill near Christopher Lake. The following year, in 2005, the Bigfoot was seen by a duck hunter near Wakaw. And a year after that, in 2006, apparently the Bigfoot was seen by motorists near Green Lake. I also found an article from August 1st, 1998, where they talked about Bigfoot prints being found on Beardy's Reserve in northern Saskatchewan, and it was mentioned that these prints were much bigger than human prints, and it was thought that they were caused by the Bigfoot. In December of 2006, there were a bunch of highly publicized sightings of Bigfoot in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and specifically in Saskatchewan, apparently a woman was driving on a highway near Torch River, and she saw the Bigfoot near the road. And when people were investigating the area later, they claimed to have found Bigfoot prints and even tufts of hair. I also found an interesting YouTube video from January 2014, and this video is allegedly of a Bigfoot taken near the town of Craven. And I even found a funny article from February 10th of 2016 talking about the connection between Bigfoot and Saskatchewan. This article talked about an NBA game that happened that year between the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks. And at the time, there was a player on the Utah Jazz team named Trey Lyles, and he was the first NBA player from Saskatchewan. During this game, the Fox Sports announcer named Jeff Wade made note that this player was from Saskatchewan and that in fact Saskatchewan was named after the Sasquatch because so many of these creatures had been seen in this province. And this sports announcer was quickly corrected, and this kind of became a big joke, but maybe he was onto something. When you really dig into it, Saskatchewan has a surprising amount of interest in Bigfoot, and there have been a surprising amount of sightings. And honestly, within this province, the Bigfoot has definitely been seen the most compared to some of the other cryptid legends I'm going to mention. And so Bigfoot Sasquatch is definitely one of the major cryptids of the province of Saskatchewan. At number 2 is the Dogman. Now, if you're not aware of Dogman, this is a cryptid that is essentially a humanoid with a dog-like head. You might say it's similar to the werewolf that exists in different European mythologies, but essentially that's what the Dogman is. The first official sighting of the Dogman was in Wexford County, Michigan in 1887, and so the Dogman has most strongly been associated with Michigan and the Great Lakes area. Now, honestly, I didn't find much content on the Dogman in Saskatchewan. I couldn't find anything in the newspaper archives or any really old stories, but I did come across a couple different Reddit posts where people were discussing cryptid legends within Saskatchewan, and a whole bunch of people claim to have seen the Dogman or heard stories about it. And yes, I'm aware that these are anecdotal stories and take them for what they're worth, but I found it interesting that this creature came up a few times in discussions on cryptids within the province. I found it interesting that of all the creatures people talked about, the Dogman was the most mentioned cryptid on this thread. One person mentioned that their grandfather repeatedly talked about a giant dog that terrorized his sheep when he was a farmer. Another person had a friend near Carrot River that claimed to have seen a wolf bear running through the woods when they were a boy. Another person mentioned that as they were driving with their family on Highway 302 to Prince Albert, they saw a lanky humanoid dog-like creature run across the road that totally freaked everyone out. And another person in the Capel Valley area claimed that they had recently seen a hopping dog-like creature, and its size was between a German Shepherd and a deer, and it really creeped them out. And so yes, these are anecdotal stories, but I just found it interesting that this Dogman creature came up more than once, and it was the most prominent creature mentioned on this thread. There was another separate Reddit post from 2020, again discussing cryptid legends in Saskatchewan, and a person shared an experience that happened to them and their family as they were driving on a highway in the winter of 2015. No specific location was given in the story, but this person talked about driving with their family on the highway. It was dark out, and they saw this really weird dog-like creature. They described it as being kind of a lanky humanoid with very long limbs and a dog-like head. They said it ran on 4 legs, but that the front and back legs bent like a human rather than a dog or a deer. And they said this creature ran quickly across the road, and everyone was completely stunned in the car, and it was unlike anything they had ever seen. And for fans of the Dogman cryptid in North America, there's actually a Dogman sighting map in which people contribute their experiences and they map out where this creature has been seen. And this map is not indicative of all of the Dogman sightings that have occurred. It's just specifically people that have contributed to this map. But as you can see, this thing has really been seen across the continent, including in Alberta and Manitoba. And so it would stand to reason that with sightings all around it, there would definitely be a couple within the province of Saskatchewan. And like I said, the Dogman is not strongly associated with Saskatchewan, but it seems like there are a bunch of anecdotal stories of people seeing this creature within the province. And so I think it's fair to say that the Dogman is a legitimate cryptid legend within the province of Saskatchewan. And at number 3 is the cryptid that is most strongly associated with Saskatchewan, and that is the monster of Turtle Lake. Turtle Lake is a very popular lake in the west central portion of the province. And reports of this creature actually date back to pre-settlement days when the local Cree tribes had legends about people disappearing after wandering into this monster's territory. This monster has been described as being between 3 and 9 meters long. It's usually described as black and scaly, clearly, but some people have said it has a smooth appearance. Generally, it's described as having no dorsal fin and having a few humps in its body, kind of like a sea serpent. And people say that the head of this creature resembles a dog or a seahorse or even a pig, so kind of a funny looking head. This is actually the 100-year anniversary of documented sightings of this creature. The first documented encounter occurred in 1923. And this creature is so well known that it even has its own entry on the popular Cryptid Wikipedia. Over the years, this creature has been blamed for huge holes that are found in fishing nets in the lake. There was an independent researcher named Ben Blatz who in the late 1970s was doing a whole bunch of research on this creature around the lake and compiling people's stories of this monster. And he even mentioned a time when there were two girls who were water skiing on the lake and they saw this monster and they were so scared of this thing that they refused to go back on the water. There was even a children's book published in 1990 called The Mystery of the Turtle Lake Monster, written by Saskatchewan writer Jenny Meyer. And this book is still available on Amazon. And I also found an interesting YouTube video from a couple years ago where a guy named Robert Gross talks about seeing a strange creature in the late 1980s around their family's cabin. He describes encountering this creature in the water as he was on a boat with his brother, and they describe this thing as being between 7 to 10 feet long and having black and scaly skin. And of course, like all of the other lake and river monsters from throughout the country, many people speculate that in fact people are seeing giant sturgeon and mistaking them for mysterious monsters. And honestly, I think this is the case. I think there have been many times when people have seen a giant sturgeon and mistaken it for a monster, especially if they're not aware that these things exist. But there have also been many times when people explicitly stated that what they saw was not a giant sturgeon. They were aware of giant sturgeon, but they claimed that what they saw was something else entirely. And I think it's fair to say that there's room for healthy debate around these creatures. But to this day, Turtle Lake is strongly associated with this legendary creature that might exist within its waters, and the Turtle Lake Monster is really the most well-known cryptid in Saskatchewan. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that list of cryptid legends within the province of Saskatchewan. Again, not a province that is strongly associated with legendary creatures, but there's definitely a few stories worth exploring. And if you're interested in Canadian cryptid legends in general, I did a couple of videos on cryptid legends in Alberta where I highlight some of the legends from that province. And if you want to watch more of my content, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be uploading at least one new video per week, and I promise my videos will improve with time. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.